Make no mistake, it was a lot of hard work in the beginning, but it's gonna all be worth it in the end. So when we moved into our new house, the previous owners had already created 2 long parallel beds that they used to grow grapes. The grapes didn't do really well here because the bed stayed so wet. So we decided to turn one of these beds into a raised vegetable garden. Now the existing beds were recessed into the ground and the perimeter was lined with some old railroad ties. We started off by cleaning off the top of all these railroad ties to make a good foundation to set the rest of the raised bed. The previous owners left well over 24 more of these railroad ties around the property. Now these railroad ties weren't like the railroad ties you would find at your favorite home goods store. These were old, they were weathered, and they didn't have creosote all soaked in them. You wouldn't want to use railroad ties with creosote soaked in them because it could contaminate your crops. We used our lawnmower in this little pull-behind trailer that we had to go around the property and pick them all up because they were scattered amongst different piles. We just slowly moved all the railroad ties we had over to the location of the new raised bed until we had enough layers to give about 18 to 24 inches of depth in soil. Some of these loads were really heavy and we were finding it tough to actually get traction with the lawnmower, so right here was something that was just hysterical to me. So basically the lawnmower was slipping and couldn't actually get up this hill, so I was getting off to switch with Lauren so that she could drive and I could try to push it, and whenever I got off, the whole back end of the lawnmower came off the ground. And I'm pretty sure after that event we said that was the last load for the day. This was a rather arduous process that took a few days to actually complete. We wanted the gaps between the logs to alternate from layer to layer to help with the structural integrity of the whole frame. This took a while because we had to cut some of the boards to smaller lengths in order to complete the actual perimeter for each layer. So once we were done stacking the timbers for the frame, I went around with mending plates and just some scrap wood and tried to bind them as best I could to just kind of connect them all and give them some more rigidity. And then it was finally time to start moving some dirt. Our raised bed was 77 feet long by about 5.5 feet wide, and we had about 20 inches deep of dirt. It took us about 20 tons of dirt to fill that space. That's basically the equivalent of one full dump truck. Toward the end of completing the raised bed, we started getting a really rainy spell around here, so we went ahead and planted everything and then we would finish up the final touches. Our raised bed had 4 vertical supports in the shape of a Y that were built out of 4x6s that were used to run the cables that supported the grapevines. Since we're not growing grapes anymore, this wasn't really needed, but rather than cutting them all down, we decided to use them for the trellising for some of the plants that would need a trellis. Now we were originally planning on buying wooden lattice to attach to these for the trellis, but we realized we had a bunch of extra rolls of this black plastic meshing, and so we decided to go ahead and just cut it into strips, anchor it to the ground, put some supports on the side, and use that for the trellis. If it doesn't wind up working out, we'll use wooden lattice next year. The final thing to do was set up our irrigation. We divided our raised bed lengthwise into 3 sections, an upper section, a middle section, and a lower section. and we would use soaker hoses in order to individually water each section. We chose this setup for two reasons. The first one being this raised bed is on a slope, so the lower section definitely gets more water than the upper section. So we've actually planted plants that can take more water on the lower section and plants that are more drought tolerant on the upper section. The second reason is because it was going to take a lot of soaker hose in order to run this whole length of 77 feet, because we were going to wind it back and forth through the width of the bed. If we were to try to do all the watering with a single run of soaker hose, all the plants at the beginning of the soaker hose would get a lot more water than the plants at the end of the soaker hose. So by dividing the bed into equal sections and making much smaller runs of soaker hose, we were able to get a more even coverage of water. So here's the device that made our watering strategy possible, the Melnor 4-zone water timer. I was able to get this one on Amazon and it works great. It's Bluetooth ready, so you can do all the programming and scheduling right from your phone, which makes it super intuitive. You can completely customize how you want to schedule it. There's no 2 or 3 times a day. It is however many times you want at whatever times you want. You obviously have to be within Bluetooth range in order to program it, but once you've programmed it, the settings are saved internally and you can walk away, go on vacation, whatever, and it'll just keep on going with the schedule. You can always manually control the water by using the buttons on the front of the device. And this is by no means a sponsored video. This is just a product that I think works really well. So that's a wrap on this project. After about a week of it being done, we got everything we wanted planted for this growing season. Almost all of the seeds sprouted. We already have some peppers, some tomatoes, and some cucumbers. So I'll be posting some pictures of our harvest in my Instagram, which you can find in the description below. Other than that, this project was fairly simple and straightforward. We already had the railroad ties, which made it really easy to lay it out. It is 77 feet long by 5 feet wide, so it's gonna be quite a bit of food. That'll definitely save us from buying a lot at the grocery store over the next few years. So we're really looking forward to what we get out of this and where it goes. We'll be switching out some of the crops, which I'll also show in my Instagram for late summer, fall, and winter crops. So other than that, I guess until the next video, take a chance and grow something.